then we have the Chinese there, and then the English underneath. In English we say ultimate truth. Now, what does it mean by ultimate truth? Well, you have, it means truth for an ultimate. So when we say truth for an ultimate, ultimate is talking about the mind that directly realizes emptiness. So in the continuums, in the mind streams of Arya beings, of exalted beings, there are these direct cognitions of emptiness. So when we mean direct cognition, it means that it's non-conceptual. So conceptuality is our way of thinking that involves sound and concepts. So we have two types of kind of perception, I guess. Like we have two types of knowledge. We have knowledge from our senses, and then knowledge that comes from our thought. So that, like, when we see this book, it's non-conceptual. We're getting a we're generating an eye consciousness that's direct perception. We don't have to think, oh, this is a book out loud in our minds. We don't have to vocalize it. We just have this appearance of the book, and we know the book. You know, same with our experiences of feeling and feeling of pain and pleasure related to the body. They're just there. You don't have to think this or that. It's just a bare kind of perception. Now, in opposite from that is our conceptions. So if I'm away from this book, like I go somewhere, I go and I need to think of the book, when that's coming to mind, it's coming to mind through conceptuality. Generally with our senses, to perceive something has to be nearby, or the means of perceiving it has to be close. With conceptuality, it's not like that. Conceptuality can come anywhere. So when you remember things you saw yesterday or saw the year before, whatever, that's conceptuality. When you're thinking, oh, this is that, and you've got some kind of internal vocalization, you're thinking, oh, you're thinking in your mind using words, that's conceptual. So when you start thinking about emptiness, you can only approach it conceptually. First of all, you think, okay, emptiness is like this. The reason for emptiness is this, and then when after a long time you work and study and think, and then finally realize emptiness, the first kind of realization you get is a conceptual realization. So it's a realization related to words, related to inner vocalization, related to conceptions. Then when you meditate on that, when it says in the text, when you meditate that again and again and familiarize yourself, finally it becomes non-conceptual. You don't have to use words, concepts. It's just as if, like we're perceiving the book in front of us, it just becomes totally clear. So, and the example in the text is like water, fresh water poured into fresh water. So that mind that directly realizes emptiness, this direct perception, this non-conceptual understanding of emptiness, that's called an ultimate. When we talk about ultimate truth, or truth for an ultimate, the ultimate is this mind that's directly realizing emptiness. Now, why is emptiness the truth of this ultimate? Well, there's different reasons explained in the text, but basically the way emptiness appears to that mind is true. The way emptiness appears to that mind, and the way emptiness exists in reality, are concordant. So it's called a truth for that mind, a truth for this ultimate mind. So when we're talking about truth here, we're talking about concordance. So like truth means to exist how it appears. False means to not exist how it appears. So like a counterexample, if you have a mirage appears to be water, but it's not actually water. So that's, in that case, you'd say the mirage is false. It doesn't exist how it appears. The appearance and the reality are different. They're not concordant. So it's called false. That's what this is talking about here with ultimate truth. So ultimate truth means truth for an ultimate mind. Ultimate mind being this mind that directly cognizes emptiness. So that's what we talk about when we talk about ultimate truth. And now, what is emptiness that we were talking so much about? Why is it so important? Well, in Buddhism we say that beings continue to suffer and continue to experience dissatisfaction from not understanding emptiness. So like we said last week, this quotation by Chandrakirti, like first beings misapprehend a self, then they misapprehend things of the self, then they spin like buckets in a water wheel in cycling existence. That's just kind of paraphrasing Chandrakirti there. I won't give the full quote. So to ultimately to overcome all this dissatisfaction, all this temporary dissatisfaction, ultimate dissatisfaction, we have to understand emptiness. And by emptiness, by understanding emptiness, by directly cognizing it and meditating on it, you become free from cyclic existence and free from dissatisfaction. So in the sutra of the royal concentration, it says, if you understand selflessness or emptiness, and then after having understood it, you meditate on it, you will attain nirvana, you attain peace. There's no other way of attaining peace. So, as you can see, in Buddhism, it's very important, this idea of emptiness. Now, here in emptiness, the main one we're going to talk about is selflessness. So here I put the English is selflessness, the Sanskrit is anatmakam, and it's the Chinese there for you as well. So what does it mean by selflessness? Selflessness is one type of emptiness, basically. What does it mean by selflessness? Well, we're just going to talk about it really roughly, but like I was saying before, you have to study it for a long time. You have to make your mind strong through study and study reasoning and study these texts about Madhyamaka and work hard for a long time to understand it. But just to kind of explain it roughly, selflessness means the lack of the self existing in the way it appears to us. So we go about the day thinking, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, these are my things, these are his things and so on. It's not so much negating that, it's negating a false sense, or a false sense of self, a superimposition of self. And this superimposition of self is what's causing all the bad mental states, or the afflictive emotions like attachment, hatred, and so on. So, for example, sorry, I got distracted then. So, now you would probably agree there's nothing to us other than our body and mind. Like if we took away our body and mind, there'd be nothing else there, right? It would be as if we'd stop existing. Now, it appears that somehow we or ourselves are separate from the body and mind. Like this is the I, this is self over here, and over there are the body, and over there is the mind. Something kind of separate and distinct, and as if the self is over here and it's controller of the body and mind. Now, this is very rough, but that lack of existence of this kind of controller, the separate controller, is selflessness, in a very rough way of explaining it. So the example I explained last week, which is in Dharmakirti's text, I'll just explain it again, is if we had an opportunity to exchange our faulty body and mind with a perfect one, normally we think, yeah, I want to do that. So like in some of the meditation texts, it says like, okay, well, you imagine that Manjushri is before you, and he's offered to exchange his body and mind with your body and mind. So in the case of Manjushri, you have a perfect body, 16 years old, all the adornments and signs and so on of a Buddha, and you have a perfect mind as well. You have with Manjushri a mind that realizes all phenomena and is without any kind of suffering, without any kind of affliction at all. So yeah, if Manjushri were to offer that, then yeah, we'd probably say, yeah, I'd like to exchange my body and mind. But that's kind of revealing a false way of apprehending the self, a self that would be left over after we exchange the body and mind. Now, there can't really be something like that. So this is what it's talking about with selflessness. The selflessness is the lack of this basically independent person that's like a controller of the body and mind. It's a very rough explanation, but that's what it's basically talking about with selflessness. And this selflessness, another name for it is emptiness. And this is what you have to have this non-conceptual realization of to be free from samsara, from cyclic existence with.
So David, in English, is what you're talking about, like this independent controller, is that will? Is that will?
Will.
Yeah, will.
Will, I don't... Willfulness, I don't think it's will, but it does have something to do with that, because when you talk about now some of the Brahmanical schools, like some of the other Indian schools that come to constitute Hinduism, they say that, okay, this self is Brahma. It's like a deity, like in the nature of Brahma. Yeah, you know Brahma is like a Hindu deity, like a kind of very important Hindu deity. And then okay, then you say, okay, well, the Buddhists like give an argument to that. Okay, well, is if Brahma is this independent kind of deity that controls everything, well, does he depend on his will or not? If he depends on his will, then he's not independent. He's dependent. If he's not dependent on his not dependent on his will, then that's kind of strange. Like normally, we're motivated to do different things by our will. So yeah, it does have something to do with will, I think. But will in itself is not the kind of independent self we're talking about. Does that kind of answer your question?
No.
No.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, will is will like when we have
I thought will and ego were very close.
will and ego are close, but we have to be careful with ego. Like there's a lot of books I've seen with the Buddhist books that use this term ego, but it's not really clear what they're talking about. Now, in ego is a term from psychology, from Freud. So we have to be careful with what we mean by ego. I think some people are probably using it to talk about self, like this when the self, when we're talking about selflessness, this false self. If that's the case, then yeah, there's some relation. But we have to be really clear. Like we have to be clear with the terms we use. That's why it's good if we can try and learn the English words, and if we can the Sanskrit and you know, if you know Chinese, it's great to learn the Chinese terms. I think if you don't know them already, so then we can have a very kind of precise discussion. If we talk about ego without having defined it clearly, it's difficult, I think.
So it would be more like, the problem would be more like the will being projected through the ego rather than the will to practice, for example. Because will can be a generator, right? Generator of effort, or a generator of this, or a generator of that. But I guess it's the allegiance between will and ego that it can be very, very disturbing.
That's kind of a psychological explanation. Will in itself is not something like totally false. Like we can talk about will, and it's something that's conventionally existent. It's selflessness is refuting something non-existent. Like it's like this is false controller, and the controller doesn't exist at all. Will is something that exists basically. So I think that's something slightly different, but it does have a relationship to emptiness and selflessness. I think. So is that alright?
No.
No. Okay. Well.
But it's close. I think that I've come to understand that will can be neutral.
Yeah.
It depends what it's coloured by. Okay, but I still think it's conventional. Because I think in emptiness, you know, you don't need a driver or a will you don't need anything to determine anything. Yeah,
well, you can say there's this will, but it's not related to and inherently it's not related to this false self.
Oh, okay. I'm with it. Thank you. Now I understand.
That's so probably
like a field of will.
Yeah, you say like
personal.
Yeah, there's statements like that in the Buddhist teachings, like like you have this famous quotation from the Hinayana Sutras. It's the action and ripened result are existent, but the maker is not existent. Maker is basically talking about self. So you have, yes, you have the body, you have different parts of the body, the hand, and then you have different parts of the mind. You have the will, you have desire and hatred and perception and conceptual minds and so on. You can have all these things, but what's being negated, what doesn't exist is this self, this false self. That
And the false self is composed of what?
it's non-existent. It doesn't exist at all.
Okay, but in our deluded state, we believe that the self consists of what?
Well, yes, it doesn't exist, but it appears.
Yes.
It appears like a controller, like
Okay.
a
No, that's
like there's something in maybe in the center of our chest, which is owning our body and mind, and the enjoyer, the controller, the maker. All these are kind of ways that it appears. Another example in the text is like the rope snake. You've probably heard of that. So you have, you see, if you have a rope, like a big thick rope, and it's dark, and there's a danger of one could generate fright by one could be scared from seeing the rope, thinking, oh, it's a snake, right? So in that way, we to explain it roughly, the rope is like our aggregates, like our body and mind, and being dark, because we saw the rope in the dark and that made us scared, yeah, of a snake. Now, being dark is like having ignorance, and then the rope appearing as a snake is like the aggregates, our body and mind, appearing as a self, as a controller. In reality, there's no snake out there. Yeah, it's just a rope. So we mistake the rope with the snake. Likewise, we just have our aggregates, the body and mind, and there's no self, but there's an appearance of self through ignorance, through the darkness of ignorance. So that's another example of that.
Okay.
This one's in the Lamrim, like in the if you want to look it up, this is it's a really good book to read. If you can, it's called in Tibetan the Lamrim Chemol, in English the Great Stages of the Path, and you have it in Chinese.
There's something that I'm trying to understand that's not being penetrated. I just don't understand. There's something that I don't understand. I understand everything that you say. It's not hard to understand what you're saying, but there's something that's not getting to the core of it for me that I want to understand. It's very close and I can smell it. And, but there has to be some sort of purpose to... So we have no controller, so what do? Just act mindlessly in conventional reality?
We have...
Or do we are determined completely by karmic imprints, so we just act those out continuously? So what is, or is our will, what is this thing? If there is no controller, are we just mindless and stupid? How does this work in conventional reality? I understand the difference between there being no truly existent self in emptiness. That emptiness is the true self. Right, I understand that. That's not hard. But I just wanted to know about this controller thing that you were talking about and how that worked within conventional reality. That's all. I'm just trying to find that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's no self, no controller in this when we're talking about this false self. Just like the rope isn't there's no rope snake. Just like that, there's no false self, doesn't exist.
Conventional self. I didn't use false self. Conventional self.
But at the same time, we do we think I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, go around doing our business. How's that possible? Well, you do have a in the Buddhist text you have like the senshi ginamshi, like it's like you have a mind which is which goes, you have a basis mind that goes from life to life,
Yes.
and is the basis for positing your activities. Like when you say I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, basically you're doing that in relation to what's called I don't know how to translate it. In Tibetan, it's senshi ginamshi. It's the basis mind would be one way to translate it. I'll look that up later for you. But you do have that, and that is kind of like a controller, like a self. It's not this false self. It's not this self that's being negated, but it's there, and it can act like a self. So.
But when we do become, sorry, boys, when we do become Buddha, then that is gone. The continuum is cleared, isn't it? The basis is cleared. It's one of the resultant. It's one of the things about becoming a Buddha is that one's karma ceases.
Mm-hmm. Well.
And surely it doesn't cease just and then come back. Maybe it ceases.
That's a bit different. That's
not the continuum.
You're talking about karma and so on.
Isn't that the
yes.
imprints upon the
So
continuum?
You probably explained that. Okay, the Buddha still has this basis mind,
Okay.
but it's been purified.
Okay.
It doesn't have, like you say, it doesn't have to undergo rebirth through the power of afflictive emotions, through, and it doesn't have any obscurations, and it's clear.
But
yes,
it's still there.
It's still there. It's not a bad thing. This senshi kinamshi, like basis mind, it's not something bad. It's just a kind of conventional basis for us being able to do our work and talk about ourselves and refer to ourselves, and to go from life to life. So, so why does my karma ripe on myself and not you? Oh, well, okay, it's because we have this kind of basis mind.
Thank you. I'm understanding.
That's kind of what we were. And I was going to say, like, this thing about the rope snake, it's actually in the Lamrim if you want to read about it. And
I've heard that story many times. Thank you very much for reminding me.
That's okay. It's in the where are we? I think it's in the medium scope. How one enters into samsara, how one enters into cyclic existence under that part, and it talks about the rope snake and so on. Let's see quickly. No, I'll get it later on. Okay, so that was ultimate truth. So this ultimate truth is basically emptiness. Basically talking about emptiness. So things like this book, the table, TV, and so on, they're not ultimate truths. They're this next type of truth, which is called conventional truth. So you have the Sanskrit is Samvidya Satyam, and then you have the Chinese there. Can you read the Chinese?
No, I can't.
Okay. Anyway, it's there just as a reference. Might be useful to some people later on, like the conventional truths are these things, everything other than emptiness that exists. So pots, books, and so on. Now we say conventional truth, the Sanskrit has got two parts here. It's samvritti and satyam. Satyam means truth, and then you have this first part is samvritti. So samvritti can mean conventional, but it also can mean concealer. So the way it's normally explained in the Tibetan texts, and especially and in the Indian texts of the Middle Way school, for example, in the texts of Kamalashila and of Chandrakirti, conventional truth means truth for concealer. So what's a concealer? A concealer means a mind that's mistaken about emptiness, basically. So, in other words, when, for example, if we're gonna relate it in terms of the person, maybe that's not so good. When we're talking about when books and so on appear to us, they appear to exist from their own side. Like there's something out there that doesn't depend on the mind, that we're kind of hitting and we're coming into contact with. Now this false appearance of things inherently existent, of things existing by way of their own characteristic, existing out there, the minds that have this appearance are called concealers. So, and because books and tables and TVs and so on, they are true just for these concealing minds. They're called truth for concealers. So